This is Duke University.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Levy, and I am one of the counselors in the Career Center. I work with graduate students. But before that, I worked with undergraduate students. I was a career counselor and a pre-major academic advisor. So I have that experience as well, and excited to be here with you all today for part of this whole Keep Exploring initiative. So just a few reminders before we get into things. One, I wanted to let you know that it is currently recording. And so just keep that in mind in case when you're asking questions, and I want this to be very interactive. So I want to answer whatever questions that you have, but just keep it in mind that it is recording in case you don't want to share any specific information that might be captured and other people might see in the future. And I do have a colleague with us today. Let me just expand my view. Catherine Allen is here, and she is one of the counselors on our undergrad team. If you want to say hey for a second, Catherine.
Hi.
And Catherine, I might ask if you don't mind, just to kind of help me keep an eye on the chat. So I would love for you to ask questions however it is comfortable. If you want to take yourself off mute and ask it that way, or if you put it in the chat, Catherine, I'm just going to ask you to help me make sure that I monitor it, because these Zoom sessions are fun when you're presenting and watching people and looking at the chat all at the same time. So thank you for that. So I will take some breaks to pause for questions. So you can save it till then if you want, or if you have something that you really want to get out, feel free, like I said, to just put it in the chat or take yourself. You all can take yourself off mute, I think. Yeah, okay, perfect. Just before we get started, let me open my gallery view. I just want to get a sense of who is here with us. So give a thumbs up. Either you can do it right in front of you if your screen is on, or just in the reactions section at the bottom if you are an undergraduate student at Duke. Okay, great. And any recent graduates, like you just graduated in May? Oh, okay. Very good. Any graduate students with us today? Master's or PhD students? And anyone from our professional schools like MBA or others? And anything that I missed? Okay, good. That's helpful just to get a sense of who is here with us. So before we get into networking, that's the session that you all signed up for today. Let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen so that you all can see some slides that I have. But again, I want to, even though I have slides prepared, I want to make this very interactive. Okay. So I just want to quickly go through some of the goals for today's session. We're going to focus a lot on networking as it relates to customs and practices in the US. So different countries, different cultures may have different ways to approach it. So I just want to put that caveat that this is going to be focused a lot on in the US. We're going to talk about strategies to help you build a stronger career community. We think that that will be really helpful and effective for you. As part of that, we're going to talk about how to reconnect with people, because some of you might have been doing a good job at maybe collecting a network, but you might need some practice or some support on how do you reconnect with those people after you've lost touch for a while. But then we're also going to practice connecting with new people, because those will be important folks for your network as well. We're going to talk a lot about how to maintain relationships. And then I have a separate piece for those of you who've just graduated. I'm assuming that you're in an active search. And I think that that will be important information to share, whether you're in it now or you will one day soon. How does sort of networking look, and what should you be thinking about if you're actively searching for opportunities? So those are the things that we intend to cover today. And before we get into that, I want to do a quick visualization activity. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to think 5 years from now. So picture it's 5 years from today. And I want you to sort of visualize and think about, what are you doing? What do you see around you? If you're working, what types of projects are you working on? What type of people are you with? What types of things are you doing that you're enjoying? Even maybe, what does the environment look like for you? So just think about those things for a second. And the reason that I think it's important to sort of do this visualization and do a kind of quick activity to get you thinking about the future is that we really think, as far as it relates to building a professional network, the more time that you can spend reflecting and thinking about the goals that you have will really be helpful as you're working to build a network. It can give you a little bit more intentionality, and you can use your time wisely. I imagine if I asked for a show of hands of who feels like they have extra time or more time than they need, probably no one will raise their hands. And so we know that you all are really busy, and networking and building relationships is an investment and it takes time. So if you can spend a little bit of time, you know, it's like getting healthy, you're working out, kind of carving out time to think about your goals and to reflect on experiences and activities that you've already had. We really think that that will help set the stage for laying a stronger foundation, even when it comes to something like networking. So for that activity, you could even take it a step further if you want. I went to a session recently where they asked us to, you know, keep our eyes closed and still envision and then draw what you see. So if you're someone who's very visual, you can draw it out and it can become sort of like a roadmap or a vision board, or you can write words, things like that. So if you want to take that activity a step further, you can certainly do that on your own time. But I wanted to touch on that for a second before we get into the nuts and bolts of networking. So in the chat, I want you to just type why you think networking is so important. And it can be, you know, just a quick phrase. Let me stop sharing so I can read the chat. Just throw into the chat what comes to mind right away of why, like, why did you come here today? Why is networking something important? I looked on the workshops for this series. I think there's 3 or 4 different workshops all about networking and connecting. So just throw into the chat why you think it's so critical. Oh, I like this. In the big picture, organizations are people. If you know people, you know the inroads into an organization. That's great. Can help you to stand out. Yep. Learn how to develop relationships to move forward in finding careers. Excellent. You can learn from the experiences of others. Great. Strong professional relationships can open the doors to opportunities, especially if they aren't advertised or run by an application process. That's fantastic. That's exactly right. Gives you larger job flexibility and opportunity, can help you identify the right people to support your work or collaborate with, can help for the future, helps you get a foot in the door. That's great. Oh, and this is awesome too. Sagar, am I saying that correctly? You are spot on. maybe you could help me co-lead this workshop. You have some great advice. Oftentimes networking is not about an immediate return, but more about increasing opportunity in the future. That's great. Provide more choices and information to help you understand what you really want to do. Yeah, these are wonderful. You all are spot on. And one of the things that I think is helpful to keep in mind is networking. You know, obviously I'm in the Career Center, so we're going to talk a lot today about how networking can help you with careers and jobs, but networking is a thing that you're already doing, you know, as you're meeting new people through classes or at social events, as you're connecting with faculty and alumni, you know, you're building a network anyways. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today, yes, does relate to how it can help you to be successful in your career. But I want you to keep in mind that networking is something that you're already doing. And then it's also a skill that you can practice. So for some people who feel like, oh, I'm not good at networking, it's like anything else. So if you didn't know how to code last year, now you do. That's something that a skill that you work at to practice, and networking is no different. So it's not that you're either good at it or you're not. So I wanted to just point that out too, that it is much bigger and broader than careers or helping you to find a job. But certainly your network is going to hopefully come in handy when you are looking for opportunities as well. But I love what you all were saying. I thought that that was great insight that you shared. So we want to talk about this maybe for those of you who are still feeling a little bit comfortable in terms of making more meaningful connections. So I think sometimes people think of networking as going into a room full of people and shaking hands. So if you're more comfortable one-on-one, that's great. But we want you to sort of think about what networking means to you and to maybe reframe the concept if it is something that still seems strange or uncomfortable, or a lot of times I hear from students, it doesn't seem natural. And we don't want you to be fake or phony. This should be something that is an authentic exchange and building relationships for you. So a bunch of you threw into the chat just a few minutes ago these exact concepts that we wanted to help emphasize. You know, you might want to think about networking as a way to gather information or seek advice from others who've been in your shoes before. I love what was said about building a reciprocal relationship. And sometimes that's tricky for students to navigate. So we'll talk about a few examples where that can come into play as we get into things. And then, as I said earlier, it's also about managing existing relationships. That's a big piece of it too. And it's an ongoing process. You know, it's something that, you know, I still do as an older professional. It's something that's going to continue throughout your life. So it is an important skill to practice now, because it's something that's going to be happening for the rest of your life. And the two things that I wanted to point out as far as what networking is not, sometimes people think it's networking to ask someone specifically for an internship or a job. So again, we want you to sort of reframe it to think about how can you create a relationship or seek advice and information, not necessarily reaching out to someone to say, hey, can you hire me? And so we'll talk about ways to go about doing that too. And then one last important thing to point out is that networking is not just for extroverts. Again, I said some people think of networking as going into this big crowded room and shaking hands, but a lot of times introverted people do much better with one-on-one networking. And so that's a lot of what's happening right now over Zoom, because we can't be in large groups and networking events. And so for folks who have a preference for introversion, networking right now may actually be a better time, or might feel a little bit more comfortable for you too. Anything else before we move on? Any questions that people have or anything that they just want to put out there that's been helpful for them as they sort of think about this process of building a network and developing relationships?
I just want to like the
Yeah.
gathering information point. I find that's like the best way to broach like a conversation with someone, because there's like no harm in just gathering information, and like that's the way you get into learning about something, right? And at first, like it is gathering information, but like keeping up to date with those people, that's like building that like relationship.
Yeah.
And gathering information's not like a big ask for those for people out there, and so they're willing to like talk about themselves and like their career, and if you like make it about them, it's like an ego boost for them, and they want to like talk to you about it. So
Exactly. Yeah. So it sounds like that approach has been helpful for you.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Anything else? Any other reflections or questions or things that have been helpful for you in the past? Okay, let's move along then. So, as part of this whole process, an essential starting point is really determining who is already part of your career community. Sometimes we call it a career community because to me that sounds a little bit stronger than just like a random network of people. So these could be people who support you in different ways. It could be people who mentor you. A lot of times we hear from students, you know, I don't really have the right connections, especially as it relates to seeking internships and jobs. I don't have the right connections. I don't even really know anyone to reach out to. And so thinking of these different groups of people that could already be part of your network, a lot of times people don't think about the first, second, and third degree connections. So for example, I was working with a student just yesterday, actually, who said that they had 5 target organizations in the area. And I said, oh, that's so funny. I'm looking out at my street. Every single person on my street, there was one person I could think of from one of those companies. And so he was sort of like, oh, so it's not just faculty that I work with, but people's neighbors, people's spouses, people's former coworkers. So there's lots of degrees of connection. So it's kind of part of that saying of it's not just who you know, but who else they might know as well. So kind of back to the beginning, if you're putting a little bit more thought career-wise into these are the types of goals that I have, these are the types of places that I'd like to be working at, that can be helpful for people to provide recommendations if you're a little bit more specific, rather than, you know, I'm a psychology major and I'm not sure what to do. Sometimes people aren't really sure how to provide help or recommendations or solutions. And then your peers. So all of the people who are in your classes, people on this call today, you know, I say you should connect with everyone on here on LinkedIn, because your peers are going to be a great source of support and maybe referrals and recommendations and advice. And then also parents of friends. I think usually when we're in high school, we might know our friends' parents a little bit more than when we get into college and graduate school, but that could still be a really strong network for you as well. And then if you look through the rest of these family, professors and former teachers, current and former supervisors and or coworkers, current and former mentors, alumni, and many more. So these are kind of the different groups of people that we naturally think about as part of your network already. And I just wanted to throw a caveat in that it's okay to maintain different levels of relationships with these people. You don't have to treat all of them the same. So I know that I get that question a lot of like, how do I manage and maintain my network and follow up? It might be different for different people, and that's certainly fine. So just keep that in mind too, that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to take the same approach with every single person that's part of your network. So if you all registered for this, I sent you a handout this morning via email. If you didn't get it for some reason, then I just put it right here. That's easy to do. So you could take a piece of paper or type on your computer. I'm just going to give you a few minutes to go through, and I want you to do 3 things. One is going to be to map out all the people that you can think of within the span of a few minutes that fit into all those different categories. These are the people that you already know. And then the second step will be to list 5 people from those names that you want to reconnect with. So maybe someone who wrote your letter of recommendation for Duke is someone you haven't spoken to in a year or 2 years plus. That could be a logical person. So sort of work through that list and pick 5 people that you'd like to reconnect with. And then the last thing is I'd like for you to determine where you might have gaps, or in other words, where you might have an opportunity for improvement. So you might find that you have lots of friends and family, but you don't have many, let's say, in the faculty section, and you really would like to seek out a faculty mentor. Or an advanced student would be a great one, someone who's a little bit further along in their program. And then certainly a gap that we usually see would be professionals working in the career fields or organizations that you're interested in. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes on your own to go through. Does anyone have any questions about going through step 1, 2, 3? Okay, I'll leave this slide up and give you all about 5 minutes to work through this. Okay, so why don't we wrap up there? I know that this is an activity that's going to take a little bit longer. Certainly you can go through in your own time just so we can move along to cover the rest of the content, but I definitely encourage you to go back and finish filling it out. Just out of curiosity, if you all could type into the chat, what was one of the groups that came up for you where you're seeing a gap or an opportunity that you might be able to get some new people into those areas? If you wouldn't mind just typing it into the chat, just so we have an idea. So I don't see anything coming through. Does anyone feel like there is a group more so than others? Okay, family. Yeah. Family can be a difficult one. And again, we're talking a lot about how this might relate to career opportunities, but maybe they're a better source of support holistically. So maybe they're not necessarily someone who could connect you with an individual, but they could offer advice from either their years of working or just sort of general support. Faculty mentors, advanced students, faculty, professionals, advanced. Okay, so that's good to see that at least the students that I've worked with seem to have sort of those 3 areas as well. For advanced students, I think that that could be an opportunity through maybe any leadership associations or academic advisors, or looking at directories of advanced students, depending if you're undergrad or grad. That would definitely be a really good opportunity, because again, those people have been in your shoes and they would be helpful to relate to. So we can talk more, and then we certainly encourage you to reach out to your respective career office, because I know we have some folks from different career offices on the call today. And so that's something that you could work with a career advisor on, strategies of how to build in some people that you feel are missing from those areas. So we'll touch a little bit on it as we go further, but there's definitely ways to attack that so that you can get some more people in those areas. And then we'll also talk about professionals as well. So let's go back to PowerPoint. Okay, so you're going through and you're mapping out all of the people, and then you're coming up with 5 that you would like to reconnect with. And then we're going to talk about some of the gaps and how to fill in the gaps. So, as far as strengthening and maintaining your connections, we really recommend that you first create a system. It's kind of like anything else. If you have these data points all over the place, it's just going to get very overwhelming. So one of the guides that I will link to at the end of this has just a very basic Excel spreadsheet. You could set it up yourself. So it's just a system of like who, what, where, when, what did we talk about? So first is to have a system in place, because otherwise it just gets a little bit unwieldy. And then second would be devoting time to it. So I think this is the biggest difficulty if you feel like maybe you have strong connections, but you would like to follow back up, but you aren't sure what to say or when to do it. So for some people, they do it monthly. It's just part of a monthly checklist, or quarterly, or sometimes they pick the summer. This summer is a little bit different than others, but usually for students, you might have a little bit more downtime. And so summers might work best for you. Other people choose at the beginning of a new year or holidays. So the point is to pick some time periods that you think are going to work for you, and then devote time to actually doing it. And then the other thing that we recommend is to always personalize your messages. And this is especially, we're going to look at LinkedIn and the Duke Alumni Directory. This is especially important for any of those sort of online systems. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to personalize it. Does anyone have any questions about creating a system, dedicating some time to it for whatever seems to work best for you, and then personalizing messages? And we'll give some examples of that in just a second. And then I would say the other concern that I usually hear from students is, well, I don't really know what to say. Okay, I've identified my 5 people or 3 people or however many, and I want to get back in touch. I'm not really sure what to say though. And so I just put on here some reasons that it might be logical to reconnect. One is just simply thanking them. So again, I mentioned everyone had to write you all letters of recommendation to get here. If that's a person that you've sort of lost touch with, that could be great to check in with them to say, thanks so much again for your support a year, 2, however long ago. I want to just give you a quick update on where I am after completing my first year at Duke. So that could be something as easy as thanking someone for something that they've done in the past, or just giving a little update. Another great opportunity, which we've already covered, is to ask for advice or information. So maybe one of the 5 people in there, it could make sense for you to follow up to seek advice or information for something that you're thinking about, or as it relates to careers, or maybe you're thinking about graduate or professional school. So that could be a reason. Another really good one, this is especially if you follow people on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever, if they post something, to comment on it. So maybe it's something professional, like they just published a paper, or they did this really neat thing, or maybe they just had a baby or got married, or did something. So it could be either in that personal or professional realm, but you're simply taking time to comment on it and just say, hope things are going well, that sort of thing. And then again, holidays and major events are usually good opportunities to do that as well. So I just wanted to share 2 quick templates that could work for you. So this was a conference that I went to a few months ago, and it was a student who was there who was going to be graduating from her program, from her graduate program, and was going to be looking for career counseling jobs soon. And so I thought that her message was very nice. So I wanted to share that as an example. She just simply said, Dear Jen, and I liked that she used the name that I went by, which told me, you know, she paid attention. It was great meeting you at this conference last week, and I'd like to stay in touch. I really enjoyed our conversation about blah, blah, blah. Please let me know if there is anything I can ever do to assist you here at Elon. That's where she's completing her program. So I thought this was very simple, straightforward. She mentioned something specific that we talked about. And then this, I think, goes back to not really being sure how to create a multi-beneficial relationship, but just simply saying, if there's anything I could ever do to help you, please let me know. I thought that that was really nice, and that impressed me, even though she didn't offer anything specific, but you could potentially follow up with someone because you're the ones doing cutting edge research, or maybe there is a paper or something that you spoke about in conversation and you're sending it to the person, or maybe their son or daughter might be eager to apply to Duke, and so that could be a good connection point. So I think the point is just being open as someone who is willing to help can be just as helpful as having a very specific thing that you might do for the person. And then here's one other one that if you've looked on our guides online, this is along the lines of conducting an informational interview. And so this one, again, I think is pretty straightforward. I saw on LinkedIn, you're a Duke alum who's now working here. I'm interested in learning more about careers combining technology and the arts. So again, I'm just seeking information, seeking advice. I'd love to talk with you about your experiences and how you prepared yourself. So the other thing that I like about this is, would you have 20 minutes to meet? Obviously, you can take out the in-person part because we're not really doing that right now. Would you have 20 minutes to talk on the phone or meet over Zoom? So that lets the person know, okay, this isn't going to be an hour that might turn into an hour and a half. It's just 20 minutes, which is relatively easy, I think, for people to find. And then I liked this piece too. You could say something like, I'm generally available for these time blocks. So that allows someone to respond back, you know, great, nice to meet you, Anthony, sure. How about next Wednesday at 5? So that one I like for those reasons. Any questions about personalizing messages, getting back in touch with people? Feel free to, like I said, just take yourself off mute and ask any questions that you have. Nothing yet? Okay, so what I thought we would do now is just do some quick demos on LinkedIn and the Duke Alumni Directory so that you can see for a second how those systems work, how you might find people. And then what I'd like to do is give you all time to work on a message. So the idea is by the time you leave this workshop, you will either have a very solid draft or you will hit send and you will have either reconnected back with someone or sent a connection request to a new person. So that's what my goal is before you leave the space of this workshop today, is to actually do one of those things. So let's go to, can you all see LinkedIn on my screen? Okay, I just check sometimes because you know Zoom does funny things. Okay, so let's say, so what I'm about to show you again at the end of this presentation is linked to the guides that we have on our website. We have a quick video and we have lots of more information showing you how to utilize online systems. So what I'm going to do quickly is just type in Duke University. So here, any institution that you've attended, you could also type in there. But alumni, and especially Duke alumni, it's such a powerful group of people that even if you don't know them and technically they're a stranger, if you reach out to them to seek advice or information, generally the Duke network is so strong that usually you will find people who are receptive. And I have found not even necessarily, they don't even have to be from your same program. So let's say you're an undergrad and you find someone doing something interesting and they got their MBA at Duke, that Duke connection is still generally so strong that that person will usually be responsive to that request. So once you go here, you're going to click on alumni. Now we're seeing all of the public alumni profiles. So these people don't opt into the system. It just scrapes the fact that they have Duke University somewhere in their education, and that's how they show up here. So you can play around. You could put in keywords here, or you could say, I want to see all the psychology majors who, let's say, work in something to do with education. And so then you start to get a list of places. So this could be helpful if you're thinking of graduate school, or maybe you're thinking of working at a university, or if you're looking for anything in industry, nonprofit, government, it's all here. So it kind of depends on the way that you play around with different filters. So you could do it that way. Or you could put in the name of a specific, does anyone have a specific company or organization that they think is doing really cool things? Well, I'll put in, since we always hear about Google, let's just play around with that for a second. So you can go and see there's currently 702 alumni working there. So that's a rather large number. So if you want to filter that down a little bit, again, you might see, I want to see the psychology majors. So now that gets us to 20. It's a little bit more manageable of a number. And here the people are right here. So let me try and find someone. I'm looking for a third degree connection. And I wanted to point out, as far as it relates to your career goals, I think it's amazing if you can find someone at your target organization who is doing the type of work you want to do and maybe even had the same major. But that is sort of like a magical unicorn that may or may not exist. So if you don't see that person, you know, look for someone else that might help. Again, they could tell you, here's what the culture is like at this organization. Here's what I found helpful during my interview process. Oh, you're interested in data science? Let me connect you or give you the name of someone who's in that group or that team. So maybe that person does exist, but they could be good entry points. So again, it's not just who you might know through your alumni network, but who else they might know too. And what I wanted to show you on here, you know, once you kind of look around and see their background and what they studied, in terms of sending a message, this will pop up and it will make you think that you need to pay for premium, but you can just go to the more ... connect. And then here you want to always, yes, I want to personalize my invitation, and you can add a note here. So I just point that out to say a lot of times students ask me, do I need to pay for premium? Is that better? No, I don't pay for premium. I still find thousands of people. So there's sort of workarounds that you can do. So even if someone is a third degree connection, I can still send that person a message. But again, please do personalize it. with, I think, 140 characters or so it's a little bit short, but so they're not just like, who's this random Jennifer from Duke University wanting to connect with me? Take a little bit of time to personalize it for them. So that's playing around with LinkedIn, and I'm assuming most of you have a LinkedIn profile already, but if you don't, that might be a good summer goal to work on. At the end of the presentation, I did link to our guide online that goes through how to just create and polish up your LinkedIn profile. And again, as career advisors, that's something that we could help you look at as well. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just going to jump over quickly to the Alumni Directory just to show you another system that you have access to. But does anyone have any questions so far about LinkedIn, even though we just spent kind of a few minutes jumping into a neat way to search for alumni specifically? We good there? Okay. Has anyone used the Alumni Directory before? I see a few, yeah, a few head nods. So once you get in, here you can search in a variety of ways. So you could use this industry or current title or employer. The thing that I like about it is you can also look up by your degree program. So this might be a good place to start if you're just kind of curious to see what do people do with my degree. So for example, I thought I saw biomedical engineer in here. You can filter it that way just to see the variety of different occupations that these people from your exact program are working at. So you can use either of those search functionalities. We generally say the people who have a description and have a picture might be a little bit more active in this system versus someone that you just see their class year, but they don't really have any other information. So just keep that in mind too as you're searching. But then you can message them through the system. This one will go to their personal email. So we always recommend that you might use both of these systems in parallel because maybe someone checks LinkedIn. I'm really bad with LinkedIn. I don't check it that much. So if something were to come to my personal email, I might see that more quickly. So you might just play around with both. And just for the sake of time, we're not going to go too much into this because, again, there is a video on our website. And I did see that the Duke Alumni Association is going to be doing a presentation as well. And they will probably touch a lot on how to use this system. So you can use it, like I said, to search by specific industry, or if you have some companies in mind, or you can just use it to kind of browse and see what do people from your program or similar ones, where are they working and what do they do? And then again, connect with them using that button. Any questions for those two systems before we move on? I want to make sure if anyone has any questions before we get off that we've answered them. I know we're covering a lot and we're going through a lot in a short amount of time. So again, please feel free to, seek out a career advisor if that would be helpful for you. Okay. Does anyone, so any of the students or recent alumni, recent graduates on the call, does anyone have any advice, recommendations, things that have been working well for them in using either of the systems to either reconnect or find new people?
I can say something.
Yeah.
I actually served as like a development chair for 2 years for my organization. So fortunately I was able to kind of work with these systems a lot. It obviously depends on what your student group involvement looks like, but on alumni.duke.edu, you can also see alumni's involvements in specific student organizations. So I found that to be an extra helpful, because not only did you go to the same school, but you had a lot of the same extracurricular experiences.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. So you mean, well, I looked at PhD, so it might be more common if it's, let's see, it looks like this person was undergrad too. So down here at my list. Yeah.
And also some of the affinity groups. I mean, I think our student organization has an affinity group, which might be a bit different, but that also was helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love that because I like to think of those like subgroups within. So it's a broader Duke network, but then it's someone who is part of like the same student organization that you're a part of or something like that. That's really good. Anything else that anyone has found helpful? Yeah.
Yeah. So I started to become interested in the renewable energy space. And Duke undergrad doesn't have a lot of like programs in that space other than like the energy initiative, which is between a lot of the graduate schools. But I wanted to like get into that. And so I was looking through a bunch of websites and I saw there was this girl who was in like every picture of every energy related thing. And I was like, I need to know who that person is. And so I found her through the alumni directory. And I contacted her, and because she was she graduated a year or two ago, she was able to tell me all of the resources and like lay out the larger image of like what Duke had to offer. And so with that, I was able to like reach out to more people at Duke and then start pushing myself into that community more. And because she had recently graduated, she was able to like inform me of what there really was. And I find that that's a common problem at Duke, is that there's so many resources that you don't actually know what's out there. And so those recent alumni can be really helpful, and they're not going to be the ones who give you a job, but they're going to be the ones that like open up what opportunities that they took advantage of and like what more there is out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. So what did you do? Just ask someone at the Alumni Association, like, who is this person that I keep seeing in all these pictures?
Well, eventually I found her name,
Okay.
in a caption of like some photo or something, but then I contacted her through the Alumni Directory. And I set up a
Excellent.
call with her. And so then she was like really nice and explained to me like all the different organizations and like activities that she'd been part of. And that opened up a lot of pathways for me to explore further.
That's excellent. I love that. And usually one of my recommendations is, especially as it comes to thinking of jobs and careers, there's going to be people at different stages who are helpful. And I love very recent alums because they just went through the process and they can be really helpful in that way. They might even be able to offer a referral or pass your resume on or something like that. But then because you're using the Duke system, you're going to find people up here. So you're going to find the CEOs and COOs and the executive directors. And I still say, go for it. Contact those people. They sometimes do respond and write back. They're going to be helpful in other ways because they maybe haven't done a job search in a very, very long time, but they're high up enough that they can help you get connected. So I love thinking of people at like different stages that can be helpful. So that's really good. Great. And you all are full of really good information. So I love hearing from you too. Anyone else care to share strategies, tips, advice, things that have been helpful when they're building their networks? Well, we only have about 20 minutes or so. So I think what I'd like to do now is, let's go back here to giving you all some time to actually draft or send a message. And I think what I'd like to do is put you all into breakout rooms. So obviously the idea of networking is you're probably going to be in there with a stranger, someone that you don't know who's on this call. But I think that it's really good for building your network, introduce yourself, talk about things that you're maybe targeting, and maybe that person has a friend or a relative or can be helpful in that way. But then also if you have questions as you're working through typing up one of these messages, then you all can help one another. And so we'll just do that for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back together. We'll talk about some specific pieces as it might relate to networking during a job search, and then we will wrap up. So let's turn on the breakout rooms. Okay, so there's maybe going to be 2 or 3 of you per room. And we'll give you 5 minutes to work on crafting a message or sending it with support from your peers. Okay, so I'm just curious if you all don't mind putting into the chat, were you concentrating on a message to reconnect with someone or someone new? So you can just say reconnect or someone new. Like someone new-ish. Okay, good. Yeah, it looks like a mix of reconnections and then finding some new people. So finding ways to reconnect, especially how to do it in a respectful way with a pandemic. Yeah, that's a question that's been coming up a lot. And I think it's one piece of advice that I would offer is it's just like any type of networking, you know, leave it up to the individual to decide. I know for many people who have been at their house, or maybe they have small kids, you know, they're actually welcoming opportunities to have a discussion with someone else and to be helpful. It's a very, I think, easy, tangible way to be helpful in a very practical way. And so I think that, you know, if it were me, I would just say something about, you know, given the current circumstance, is this something that they're open to? Are there times that are better? But then I would just let them decide if it is. But what we've been hearing pretty much unanimously from employers and alumni and colleagues is that yes, they're very open to it right now, and might even be more so. And then does anyone have anything that they want to share with the group as far as something that was helpful that their partner maybe shared, or anything that would be good for us to hear as we're thinking about going forward and either reconnecting with people or trying to find new folks to bring into our network? Okay, well, let's move along and we will wrap this up. So I wanted to throw in a few things because I think that networking for people who are actively searching, there are some things to keep in mind. I think everything that we've talked about so far definitely applies, but a few points that I would emphasize if you're in an active search would be to maintain your network much more frequently. So for some people, it might be daily, if not weekly. Definitely having a system and carving out time to check back in with folks that maybe some time has passed and you want to follow back up with. This especially is true for employers. And I think now, given all the uncertainties and everything going on, and we also have some templates on our website of how to check in and follow up with employers for all stages of, did you receive my materials? Or maybe you were called to schedule an interview, but you haven't heard back, or maybe you've interviewed and still haven't heard back. There's definitely professional ways to follow up. And I've actually heard from a number of students that I've worked with over the years, sometimes it's the follow-up and checking back in, reminding them, hey, I'm still really very interested in this opportunity. I just wanted to check in and see if there was a status update. sometimes that seems to be the thing that gets the wheels in motion. So just create that into your kind of daily or weekly plan. And then certainly I would conduct more informational interviews if I was in an active search. I think the more that you're doing that, the more useful information, advice you're getting, because you're actually talking with people who work at the organizations that you're targeting. And then the best question you can be asking them is, who else should I reach out to next? And so they might provide a recommendation of someone that they know, or someone that they're part of a professional association with, or something like that. And so it kind of keeps you on a constant mission of new people to speak with. And then I think that this is a really good point. Ask someone in your target industry if they could review your resume. So Catherine and I are always happy to look at your resume, and we have some pretty good advice and recommendations, but I think the best person to have to take a look at it and give you feedback is someone who actually works either in the industry or the exact place that you're seeking to work yourself. And it can just be quick. You know, could you take a 2-minute look at my resume and provide any feedback that might be helpful? So I think if you're in an active search, getting someone who is part of that industry to give you feedback will be really, really essential. And then I still put this under the umbrella of networking. If you applied online, and let's say you looked on LinkedIn and the Duke Alumni Directory, you don't know anyone who works at this place, but you applied online. I think simply finding someone who works at that organization, either through their website or something else, and just alerting them, hey, I'm really interested in this opportunity. I have a great skill set that matches what you're looking for. I just wanted to let you know I've officially applied online. You know, sometimes that helps you to stand out when there's thousands and thousands of other applicants. And so I kind of put that in the networking umbrella, even though it looks a little bit different. Anyone else have any tips, strategies, advice that you think would be especially helpful for people who are actively searching? All right, so we're just going to wrap this up with some ideas and next steps for you. So certainly creating or polishing up a LinkedIn profile, I think would be a great short-term goal. In the next slide, I have linked to our guides that will help you do that. And even if you're in another career center, they have amazing resources, but all the stuff on our website is free and available to you too. So maybe there's something new that you pick up there. So certainly utilize that. And then I would say join relevant groups. That would be helpful. We talked about, Brennan, I think it was, mentioned kind of the mini subgroup within a larger network. So even if you're on LinkedIn, join the Duke Alumni Association. Even if you're a student and you're not an alum yourself, that will then give you access to the alumni group. And you might meet people through that subgroup as part of your networking strategy. DEMON, for those that don't know, stands for Duke Entertainment Media Arts Network. So if you're interested in the arts and media, that's a fantastic mini network to be a part of. And then Duke Gen stands for Global Entrepreneurship Network. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship or innovative companies, that might be a good subgroup. So talk with one of us or do a little bit of research to see where are the different groups. You can also look at people who work at the places that you're aspiring to and see what groups they belong to. So the next one, for example, is something called TRI-Y-STEM. It's Triangle Women in STEM. And so you might see on their LinkedIn profile that they're part of that group. And if you join that then will give you access to them and the jobs that they're posting and the information that they're sharing. And then for any professional association, you can always look at the mentor or member list. There might be a directory. So if you want to do data science, there might be, women in data science professional group. And then they might have a directory or a listing of individuals that you can network with there. And then also tell people about your professional goals and see who they might recommend. So kind of going back to the very beginning of this session, putting a little thought into what that might look like for you, the better that you can articulate that will help other people to make referrals and connections that can be helpful to you. And then lastly, I've linked here to our courses, and we have some guides and some short online courses that might be helpful for things like conducting informational interviews or going through the self-awareness process. If maybe you're feeling like, I'm not sure how my interests and skills and values align with careers, that might be a good session to check out. And then check out Career Connections weekly. We have employer events. We have a career fair coming up in July. So I would say just check that weekly to see, are there any events, workshops, or employer related opportunities that are happening, so you can sign up for that. And then I would definitely encourage you this week to either reconnect with the 5 people that you thought of and or connect with some new individuals so that you can start building out your network. And again, the Career Center is here to help you with all of that. Anything else before we close? And we have a few, maybe we have 1 or 2 minutes left for questions, but I can still hang out for another minute or two. Does anyone else have any parting tips, advice, questions, anything for the good of the group?
Would you be able to send us this presentation?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I will. Did you register?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think we got a PDF, but would you be able to send this presentation?
I will. Yes, I will do that right when we conclude. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else, Catherine? Is there anything that you want to add, like a favorite tip, piece of advice as it relates to networking or anything along those lines?
I think this has been really thorough, so there's not too much more for me to add, but the one thing that I'll recall back is earlier in the presentation, Jen talked about reframing networking to work for you. And I think that if you are someone who does not get excited about networking, not super fond of meeting new people, one way to think about this is strategy and sort of a quality over quantity. So really digging into the research through LinkedIn and through the Duke Alumni Association to find the people that are situated in the best spaces for you, so that you're not, you don't feel like you have to just have it, that it's not just a numbers game, right? So you don't have to meet everyone. So definitely the strategy piece, I think, is huge. So yeah, I think that's the only thing that I would sort of reinforce.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Quality over quantity. And maybe you're someone who enjoys it and this process is fun. If not, I know I meet with many students who do not feel that way. So I thought I would conclude with the parting words of a graduate student that I worked with for a few years, and he is now happily employed as a data scientist working at a healthcare company in New York. And I said, is there any information I should pass on? And he said, yes, I want you to let everyone know that networking sucks, but it's essential for your career growth. So if you're someone who doesn't enjoy it, we are here to help you through strategy, process, feeling more comfortable, practicing. Again, it's a skill that you can practice to hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable and confident in doing. And so we will leave it at that. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Catherine, for being here as well. And please, seek us out or your respective career centers for any follow-up questions or support that we can provide.